Hello, everybody. Welcome back for our next panel with Women Leading the Charge. We're excited to have everybody with us for this terrific group that's going to be led by Donna Orender. We just had that great session with Paul Tagliabue and Kim Davis and Diane Billings-Burford, and Jared led a great session there. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Now we've got more excitement in store, and we look forward to having everybody participating here. So thank you for coming on with us, and we'll look forward to this conversation.
Okay, Roy, is that it? Is that it? Okay, we're ready to go. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're all shared in the delight of being part of the Sports Philanthropy Network. I think all of us know that Roy's efforts and desire to really create an opportunity for all of us to be involved in sports in a way that we can give back is palpable and real. So we're here, happy to join you. For this hour, we're going to talk about something that is passionate, is a passion of all of ours. And by the time we're done, we're hoping if it's not, we've increased it even more if it is for yours. It's about women leading the charge. It's 2021. Women have made substantial, I would say, increases in terms of our presence in all sorts of levels of businesses and the value that we are accorded in our communities. But here we are, I guess, post-pandemic. And the question is, are we still leading the charge? And we're going to talk about both, how we lead the charge, the great values and attributes and skills we bring, and then some of the difficulties and barriers that are either systemic or individual that we feel that inhibit us from really realizing the full potential we have. Joining me today are a stellar group of women. I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves to you, and I'd like to start with the amazing Shelley Zalis.
Hey everyone, so excited to be here. I'm actually zooming in from Paris for Generation Equality. Never a more important time in our lives for us to achieve equality, and the only way to achieve it is to be it and to believe it. And as Donna said, it is about understanding and realizing our power with intentionality. So let's do this and do this together. I am Shelley Zalis, the CEO of the Female Quotient. The Female Quotient is all about closing the gender gaps and changing the equation. So thrilled to be here to have this conversation about the power of women.
Oh, Van.
Yes. Hi, I'm VanAdams. I am the president and founder of the VanAdams Sports Group, where we leverage sports and entertainment to drive revenue for athletes and organizations. I'm also the founder of Gathering on the Greens, a women's initiative to help women understand the business of networking through playing golf. And I lead an organization called the New York City Metro chapter of Women in Sports. We're all about empowering and giving professional development tools and resources to women to advance their careers.
It's a shame you're not busy, Van, really?
Really? Yeah.
You have to lead a golf group in order to play, I guess, because you have a lot on your plate. And Natalie, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so great to be here. I'm Natalie Hummel. I'm the co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Every Kid Sports. We started Every Kid Sports with the mission to help more low-income kids and kids from income-restricted families get the opportunity to play sports. We believe sports is one of the most powerful youth development tools, and that every kid should get that opportunity. Currently today, only 22% of income-restricted kids are getting a chance to play sports, and the number one reason they're not playing is they can't afford it. So we just felt like something had to be done. And yeah, so we've been around for 11 years and just received the funding to take our program national. And we opened that up on June 22nd, and with the goal of helping 100,000 kids this year.
Wow, 100,000 kids. Tell me, how are you going to scale that? How are you going to scale? How many are you now? I'm just curious.
Well, the way we've designed our program, it's online. Families can apply for support in the privacy of their own home, and they are able to do that, on their phone or on their computer. And then we actually issue them electronically a payment card that they can use to register at a youth sports organization, just like a family of means. And so we've designed it in a way that it is super easy to scale and easy to help families all across the country. So it does not take, a huge staff or boots on the ground. We're able to do it, in Bend, Oregon with a lean but mean staff.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about sports. We're all involved in a variety of ways. Actually, I met Shelley at the NBA All-Star game, not because she was playing in that game, but she was doing her great gender work there. You an athlete, Natalie. Van, you also played. Shelley, you can share your any kind of competitive experience. I'm a big believer. It doesn't matter how old you were or where you were, as long as you play and you learn how to compete. That makes it great. But the value of sports, you said, I love this. Sports is the best empowerment tool for kids. But why is it that girls and women have so much less access and less respect when it comes to the sport industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one of the things that happens, if you think about an income restricted family that is struggling to figure out, okay, we want to get our kids playing sports. We see the value of it. They have, maybe a son at home and they have a daughter at home. And you think about the son might be bouncing off the walls, has all of his boy energy, and the parents might scrape up the money to get the boy playing. And some of it's like just the way people think about youth sports, and they think, oh, they're for boys. Some of there's like a built-in bias towards that. Sometimes it's that the boy is causing more disruption at home and they want to get that child playing. And so a lot of times the girls are the ones who aren't getting the opportunity. And that's one of the things we love about our program is we're actually seeing that now all of a sudden a family can say, oh my gosh, it's not just getting my son playing, but I can actually afford now to get my daughter in as well. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that goes on there. There's also more peer pressure with girls, not when they're younger. If you get them playing when they're younger, a lot of them stay playing, but there's more peer pressure on girls to, right around that 12, 13, start to look prettier and, being sweaty and playing sports maybe doesn't fit some of that. So I think there's some stereotypes there that we need to work on as well.
Totally. I mean, I was always told you either had to be feminine or an athlete. You couldn't be both. And I can't tell you how many years ago was that. Shelley, you're looking at this from a global aspect. You said you're in Paris working with UN Women. From a gender gap perspective, where does sports fit in? Is it part of the conversation for women and girls?
Well, I think, one of the biggest issues, I'm also co-founder of See Her. If you can see her, you can be her. And representation matters. Less than 4% of highlight reels in sports are women. So that becomes a really big issue. So that's where we have to start to flip the script and flip the media reels. Like, why are we not portraying girls in sports in any of our highlight reels? That's a really big issue. And then yet, on the other hand, 94% of people in C-suite have played on a team sport. So we also know that so many role models come from sports, have played team sports. So it is so incredibly important to get more girls in sports. So many amazing skills come from playing on a team sport, whether you've been an athlete, a professional athlete, or just playing in a college sport or in a high school sport, or, in elementary school. Team sports is so incredibly important. So everyone should have the opportunity. So Natalie, all the work you're doing is so incredibly important, encouraging boys and girls to play in some kind of sport. It's great for confidence on every level.
Without a doubt. And Van, you're involved at WISE, Women in Sports and Entertainment. You are working with women in the sports industry, women who are leaders, who are probably looking to advance their careers. What are you seeing now, especially post-pandemic, as it relates to women in leadership positions?
I think that what we're seeing now is, one, women are understanding that there's a new way to do work. It's particularly when it comes to remote work. They're also seeing their value, when they're not able to work, how the organization is structured and the contributions that they make. But I think that there's a real appetite. It continues. Women want to develop, they want to advance. We see a lot in the sports business in particular. We call that messy middle. And I think it's that way across the board in terms of organizations that are not sports related. Women get to the middle management level and then they find a hard time advancing. They can't seem to move up the next level of the ladder because those rungs are broken. And now from the pandemic, with so many women leaving the workforce for a variety of reasons and lifestyle choices, the question then remains, how do we continue to have a strong pipeline of women What are the professional development tools that we need to provide for them so they can advance? But also, what are other resources that employers can give to their female employees, but also make it available to all of their employees in terms of how we work, how work gets done.
Right.
It doesn't always have to be 9 to 5 in a cubicle every single day for every single role of every single department. And I think that for someone like myself, who's owned her own business for 17 years, I've hired lots of people remotely and they've gotten the job done. You didn't know they weren't in an office together. And I think a lot of people now over the past 14, 15 months are starting to realize that maybe there is a new way to approach how we think about work.
Right. And so always a leader, Van, that would be you for sure. But we know that about 5 million women have left the workplace in the last year. And the number of women coming back, it is a trickle in comparison to those who left. Mm-hmm. A lot of it has to do with a lot of reasons, as you said, but childcare does seem to be, the pandemic really shined a light on the duality of well, let me say it this way, on the primary source of childcare coming from the woman in a household, more so than the man. Maybe some of that is because of income, economics, maybe it's just our culture. You say that we have to figure out a way to change this. You guys, how are we going to fix this? Listen, the 4 of us can fix this today. We can change the world today. What are you seeing, Shelley?
Shelley's on mute.
Shell, we can't hear you.
The host has to unmute me.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, they unmuted me. No, they unmuted me. Sorry, the host had to unmute me. Sorry, everyone. Big issue. My girlfriend Eve Rotsky says it's called invisible work. And as Van talked about the messy middle, it's always been an issue. It's a caregiving issue. Women, we start 50-50. We end at less than 17% in the C-suite. We fall off in middle management. It's predominantly a caregiving issue. Work-life balance, we can't, it's where we have more responsibility at work, more responsibility at home. But the pandemic, it's really the she session. It really became an even bigger issue where women have been at home, men too, but it's the Zoom fatigue, it's the Zoom issue. How do you be on Zoom with work, but also taking care of Zoom schooling with your children? So a lot of women have just been voluntarily opting out because they have not been able to do it all. So one of the things that we have to really think about if we want to make sure that we get our women back into the workplace, not back to work, but back to office, which is really a big issue, is the flexibility, yes, but we have to make sure not to make it elective, because if we make it elective, then who's going to take it? Primary caregivers, women of color. We're going to have more bias barriers. So as we think back to office, if we make mandatory flexibility 3 days a week, 2 days a week, it'll be something that everyone takes, not just having women of color and primary caregivers taking it, where it creates those bias barriers. So we have to start with intentionality, thinking about how we create these new rules of life stage accommodation, but flexibility that is good for everybody, and not just creating these bias barriers that once again force women to become the exception to the rule. So these are the kinds of things that we have to take into tremendous consideration so that we do create the she-covery in a very thoughtful way.
So we have the she session and now the she recovery. I like that both. I think, Shelley, what I really pulled out of that is I like when you said new rules for life stage accommodation, and understanding that when we change the rules for all, we all benefit. We think it's for women. At Generation W, where we are, we always like to say, when you elevate the life of a woman and a girl, you elevate us all. And understanding this collective teamwork, right? Life is a team sport, that we all benefit when we elevate, or as you say, be very intentional about changing certain aspects of a life that you said, VanAdams, you talked about the rungs of the ladder being broken, right? And we need to fix them. And when we collectively fix them, everybody gets to climb that ladder, right? Our young kids get to climb that ladder for access to sports. Our team leaders or our sports leaders, they get to climb the ladder to have bigger for bigger responsibilities. And Shelley, as you're saying, the women of the world get to prosper. So, I mean, we have to join efforts, but let me ask you, let's switch it the other way. Women leading the charge. Let's look at some of the good stuff women are leading in and why they're leading.
Because we're qualified to lead.
Okay.
We're very capable, right? Like women we're very, very capable. And I don't think that's ever been a question. It's just getting the opportunity. And so when we have the opportunity to lead, we typically lead and we lead very well. And we're problem solvers, I think by nature in some ways, but we multitask well, we are effective. And all of those things pour in to make good businesswomen, good leaders.
I think the other thing that I see a lot with that is just the leading from the heart, that I think it's more available for us. And I don't mean to say that it's only women who lead from the heart, but I do think that that is more of a common place to start and to build really collaborative teams. And I know for me, I have a lot of women who work for me and moms who work for me. And, it's just second nature for me to design a flexible workspace and workplace for them and to accommodate their going to kids, events and to have sick days and be able to work from home. And because I had to go through that myself. And so I think the more women we have leading, the more we can design workplaces that work for women.
I also think, when you look at the masculine and the feminine, not the male, female, but the masculine and the feminine, the masculine, decisive, linear, aggressive, assertive, directive, the feminine, emotive, compassionate, passionate, those are all nurturing, those are all feminine. And when you look at the pandemic, the countries that have operated the most effectively and the best have been countries run by women. And I think that is really about caregiving. The best qualities of leaders today are those qualities of caring, and yet we're losing our best leaders to caregiving. I mean, it's just an oxymoron. Mm-hmm. And so I think these are the things that we have to very carefully think through, those kinds of qualities. Those are the soft skills, and yet those are the invisible skills. Those are the skills that we never reward. And also when you look at qualities of leadership, when you have women leading, they put more energy and thought into the ESGs more than the financial returns, but really into the ESGs and rewarding on those values. And that's the human values. That's the heart, as Natalie talked about. And that's what we're looking for. That's what we should be rewarding today for the greatest qualities of leaders. That's where you see the greatest attraction and retention of talent. If that's what we look for, and that's how we get the next generation of leaders. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for, companies that actually have purpose in their DNA and care. So I think we need to start reinforcing those values.
Van, is that similar to what you're hearing at WISE New York City? I mean, you have several hundred young women, right?
Yeah, and they range from entry level to the most senior level executive women, all in the sports and events sphere. But I also think what we're hearing is people want to work for companies that have a moral compass, and they want that to be authentic, not performative. There has been a lot of awakening over the past year with the performative messaging and responses to every external happening within society. And so I think there are a lot of people who are waking up and realizing, maybe this company doesn't align with my values. I want to do something else. And now might be a good time to do it as we're hitting the reset, and, returning to office and thinking differently about how we're going to carry forward within our careers.
I think somewhere between 41 to 52%, there's still a huge anticipated, if you will, merry-go-round, where a lot of people got as many as 52% of current employees may get off the merry-go-round to get on somewhere else, and it might not even be in the same industry. Yeah. And if you're a business owner, and like I think we all are, in some ways we applaud the ability to stand up, but when you're running a business, it's a little bit daunting at the same time.
Yeah. You have to know your employees. And I think that hiring managers and decision makers are really going to have to dig deep with some level of empathy for their employees and listen. to what they're requesting, listen to what their needs are, and try and deliver on that in a way that doesn't bring harm to your business model or business structure, right? Because businesses need to be able to survive, but in a way that complements what your employees need. Because if you're a business and you don't have employees or you're short staffed, it's going to be a hard road to toe.
Yeah, and we're seeing that, especially at our local restaurants here in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
Right? The
Service industry is having a hard time.
Really hard time. And so, the question is, what do they do and how do they do it? And how long is this readjustment going to take, right?
Yeah.
It could be quite a while. Now, Natalie, for you, right? All of us want our kids in sports ASAP, right?
Yes.
There is a push. And why has youth sports gotten so expensive? What's happening?
Oh man, that's one of the things in the US more than anywhere else in the world is we have this competitive sports model where our parents believe that by getting their kids in these, intensive training programs and year-round sport programs that they're serving their children, that they're doing something really good for their children. But actually the opposite is true. The research overwhelmingly shows that those competitive sport programs are actually hurting our children. They're hurting our sports ecosystem. The dropout rate is huge. The overuse injuries are, very high. The number of the overall athleticism of our country is down. It's the lowest it's ever been. And, if we keep going on the trajectory we are on, we won't have enough NFL players to, create NFL teams. We won't have enough, football players, basketball players, baseball players to field the high school teams that feed into the college teams that feed into the pro teams. And, we're seeing it in Olympic performance, right? I mean, we're used to dominating in gold medals and we're losing to very small countries because of the way we're doing youth sports. And it all comes from a mindset. It comes from a mindset that, oh, if I can afford it and I can get my kid in the best program and they're being trained at a young age that they're going to play year round, they're going to go on to college and then they're going to go on to pro and they're going to be successful. So it kind of comes from the parents. It comes from the a lot of the sports leagues. It's turned it into a business. So instead of looking at what's the best for our children, they look at it what's best for our league, and it's become a profit center. And so there's a lot of competing forces there. And so what we really believe in is bringing back a recreational youth sports model where kids are going from sport to sport to sport. They're having fun. It's about youth development. It's not about going to college. The people who are good enough to go and play at college will be good enough even if they don't train year round. Those people are going to rise to the top regardless of whether they have that type of training or not, because they're born with that athleticism. And yes, does training and coaching help? Absolutely. But should it be done at age 9, 10, 11, 12, 13? No, it should be done at 14 at the earliest. 15, 16 years of age is when that type of training should be taken on. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to revolutionize is the way we think about youth sports.
Yeah, I would love to be on your team on that. I played 7 sports when I was a kid, and I think it's a travesty today how the competition for young talent really puts them on a specialized path and we burn them out, just as you're saying. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy physically or emotionally. It's not great for the family. I don't understand how these families have money to take them all traveling. I kind of I opted out with my kids. I said, I'm not flying you all over these places to play. You can play at home. But, as you said, the competitive war games, if you are, to compete in sports are on and real and, very impactful for those who make it through. But what's the percentage of kids that really make it through, Natalie?
Well, I mean, it's very low. 70% of kids are dropping out by age 13. Only 56% of kids are playing right now anyways. And from income restricted, it's only 22% are playing. And then you take on top of that, 70% are dropping out. And then you look at how many are actually make it into college, and it's something like less than 1% make it into the pros. So, I think it's less than 4% are getting college scholarships from it. And, if the parents would take all of the money that they're investing in youth sports and travel and all the things that they do to try and get their child a college scholarship and save that money in a 529 plan, they'd probably be able to pay for 3 of their kids to go to school, and their kids would be healthier, more well-balanced, and we'd have a much healthier country, and we have a much healthier youth sports system. So it's it's really a tragedy, and it's so hard to change, the trajectory that we're on, because people are so bought into it, they can afford it, and they just, when you talk to them, even if you can kind of get them to not be defensive about their choices, they just have so many but this, but that, and it's hard for them to see what's actually happening. So
But you were a collegiate volleyball player, right?
I played at a D1 school. Yeah.
And how did that experience impact your life?
I mean, it was great, and I worked hard to get there. I didn't play club volleyball until I was in high school. I was a multi-sport athlete. I had 9 letters in high school, and I went from sport to sport to sport. Wow. I played all kinds of things growing up. And so, and I will say I only played 2 years in college, because when I got to college and played at the collegiate level, all of a sudden it became a job. All the fun of playing volleyball went away for me, even though we were great. We were 7th in the nation my sophomore year. We were a phenomenal team, but it was no longer about all the things that I loved about youth sports, which was, testing yourself physically, having a team that you could play with, about, just improving yourself. It all of a sudden became this job, and this, it was just a lot of pressure, and I didn't go to college to play volleyball. I went to college to get a degree, and being on the volleyball team made it really hard to get a degree. So,
that is true, because then you have 2 full-time jobs, right? You have your academics and you have your sports, and that's probably another panel that Roy has. We can talk about NIL, but that's probably not our focus today. We're going to get back to essentially women leading the charge. Who out there in the marketplace today? I'm going to ask Shelley. You get to see so much. A woman leading the charge that caused you to say, wow, she is doing such great things. I wish more people knew about what she is doing, because she is really blazing a trail for us.
Listen, so many women. I mean, for me, Steph McMahon and I have a series, Women in the Business of Sports, because it's not just women in the ring, WWE, but also women in the business of sports that we love to highlight and feature. So Steph is doing so much, bringing visibility to women. And I love this story that Stephanie tells, because she actually lives and breathes it. It was the title belt. The women's title belt was this small little title belt with butterflies. And, why should women's title belt be different than the men's title belt? And so now, of course, it's the same size. I have a title belt, which I'm.
Yay! Well, that's because you're a heavyweight champion, Chef. Come on.
And it says Chief Troublemaker on it. So that's my title. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I mean, she's just doing, so much to bring visibility to women in sports, which, I applaud her. The WNBA, with the NBA doing so much, having a commissioner, obviously Adam and Kathy, doing so much around that. Abby Wambach, so vocal. Billie Jean King, standing up, standing out, for women and equality in women's sports. It's so many incredible women, just, Megan Rapinoe doing so much. So many incredible women using their platforms. The one that I'm obsessed with, and this was show and tell for results, was the most recent one with college basketball, showing the women's gym versus the men's.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous. It was one picture to say, this is the men's gym and this is our gym. And it was a whole huge space with one rack of weights.
Yep.
What? Right? Like, it was one picture said it all. That was it. And next thing you knew, what were they going to do? They had to fill the room with equipment. So, I can go on and on. We feature so many incredible women doing remarkable things in sports, and Paralympians doing incredible, things, especially with the Olympics coming up. Women gymnastics, I just applaud them for using their voice and speaking up and speaking out. With as hard as it is, they're making a difference for all the young girls to come. So I can keep telling story after story.
No, and we're here to tell stories. And let me just invite anybody. I see that the chat works. Thank you, Brandon, who wanted us to know why he doesn't see why boys and girls can't play together on some teams. I agree with you, because they work together in the world as well, with the need to think about the he wrote LGBTQ plus community. And yeah, recreational sports will really help us do that, right, Natalie? And then Danielle wanted to know what caused this shift in the youth sports model. And we'll come back to that one, Natalie, if we can. But I'd just like to invite, if anybody has any questions or comments, please share them with us, because this is a collective community where we'd love to be able to talk with you. Van, how about you? Who's doing things these days that just make you so excited?
Yeah, a lot of things really make me excited. As I was listening to Shelley talk, I was thinking that, for one, I think that as a collective, the WNBA has done an enormous amount of work, from everything from the commissioner to their individual players. But in terms of like women leading the charge, I have the Birdies for Business interview series that we do with Gathering on the Greens, and we talk to dozens of women whose names are not maybe on the front of a magazine cover, but they're doing incredible work. And I think that to some degree, that's really where it starts. It's not always the person who's in the C-suite or who's always getting interviewed or you see in the media. It's the women who are working in these offices and organizations. They're doing the work. They have been doing the work for years and decades, and they're quite skilled and talented and subject matter experts in it. You just don't know their names. So if you take some time to listen and find out and broaden your networks and diversify your circles, you'll find some amazingly talented women who are doing the work and are up for the challenge. I'd also say that there are some brands who are coming on strong and being more vocal and doing a really good job, as well as brands who've always been out there doing the work that we weren't paying attention to until now. And it's like, why did they just start? And you're like, no, that company's been here since the 60s or 70s and they've always done it. But I do like the Jordan brands. They now have the roster, 11 female athletes. They're calling them the emerging women athletes. And these are all Black women, women of color.
Yeah, isn't that great? I've always been mad at Michael. I've always been mad at Michael, Van, because I always thought, like, look at you. Yeah. You should be standing up. Right? You have a voice. Why can't you use it in this way? And we know he always hasn't. Yes. But somehow that brand has decided to make a stand, and I think it's pretty great. I agree with you.
And he's used his voice just last week. He said, "Hey, women are part of this community, and we need women to make this all work together." And so I just thought that's amazing. I believe they call it the family. Like the wonderful creatives around it, like just bringing them all together. And so I look at all of those different layers and think that we are in a good place. We just have to continue to keep the ball in play and keep it moving forward.
I totally agree. And I love what you say about it, just the women that come to work every single day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, women generally, they don't do it for the accolades. They don't do it for being on the front page. They do it to make sure, right, that there is success as a result of what they believe and where they're going to spend their time.
Yes.
As you said, Shelley, that's not always rewarded in the ways that it should be recognized and rewarded. And I don't say the reward's the front page, right? It comes in money and benefits and a title that acknowledges the contributions that women make.
Right.
The WNBA did a whole series called Watch Me Work. And it was really, they don't play for the money. I mean, they play because they love the game. And it is just such a true statement for who they are, because they get paid so much less than the guys. So it was a really beautiful series.
As somebody who's negotiated a collective bargaining agreement, I understand that they pay for less.
Yeah.
And we somehow justify it and whitewash it, if you will, by saying, okay, we play for the love of the game. But at some point, Natalie, when you're at that level, you deserve to be paid. And yes, it's a business, but the business is a reflection of our culture and what we value. And I always like to ask the question, or ask us, what is the world telling us? Who is worth more and who is worth less? And too often we're told so often we're worth less that we buy into it and then don't ask for all that we deserve, right? Because the world keeps telling us we're not deserving. And that just, listen, you said, I mean, I wrote down all these names, Shelley. You talked about all the women in sports, and then the ones whose names we don't know, who are driving an industry in a way and in numbers never have before. It's probably why my obsession is Billie Jean King. Grateful to have spent some time with her recently, and her and Alana. And I just think what she did and how she did it and continues to stand up, right? That's the role model. We need to be more like her at the expense of her career, at the expense of being loved, although now she's beloved, right? But the key points in her career, she was willing to put on the line to make it better for all. And
You know what she told me? She said, Billie Jean said, I knew at the age of 13, she said, I did not know that I would be a tennis champion. She said, but I knew that I was going to be a champion for women at the age of 13.
And that's incredible. So how many of us feel that way? And as a champion for women, we're a champion for all of us. It's not exclusive at all. So Natalie, let me come to you. And like, who are you thinking about these days? Who's caught your eye that makes you really say, wow?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the organizations that I've learned a lot about recently, because they've provided funding to us, is Dick's Sporting Goods. And, you know, they were the ones that came to the rescue at the NCAA and made sure that the women had the same equipment as the men. And just recently, they also are doing a tour where they have a truck that's going around to 30 different cities, and it's all focused on giving equipment to low-income girls. And they had paid athletes that were going to be showing up as part of this truck tour. And they went over budget on this next truck tour because they had the women, the athletes that were going to be showing up on this truck tour were going to be paid less than the men that were part of the tour that happened through the winter months. And they took a stand and said, no, we're not going to pay them less. Even though they were willing to do it for less, we're going to pay them the same that we're paying the men. And so I think it's those little actions that make the difference. It's companies like that standing up and saying, no, we are not going to be part of the problem anymore. Even though these women weren't coming to them and saying, no, you need to pay us what you paid the men, they were proactive and said, this isn't okay. Now that I see this, I'm not going to be okay with this. We're going to take a stand and make sure that they're paid the same. So I think it's those little actions that make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a great line. Now that I see this, I'm not going to participate in this. And Lauren Hobart, as you know, is the president of Dick's Sporting Goods. They have a women president. And she, I mean, as you spoke about, they have this whole campaign that actually highlighted a lot of their staff, their female leadership staff, which is in great numbers, and the differences they're making. It's really quite a beautiful thing. I will tell you that I also sit on the board of the World Surf League, which are the best surfers in the world. And I can't tell you how proud it was as a board to be able to vote on the proposition and ultimately the execution that our women's surfing CT, which is our championship tour, get paid the same as the men. And you know, globally it hit, it was big news, but I honestly think that there's a lot of credit to be given here for being the same thing. We see what it is. It's not okay with us. We're going to change it. Right?
Well, think about where equal pay is in sports. It's surfing, it's car racing.
Tennis.
Is it volleyball, tennis?
Well, tennis only in the majors, right? Not in the other events. Is that correct? Like their total prize money is still much bigger. I think it's just the majors, which matters big time, obviously. So your point then, Shelley, it's not in the major sports, but why not?
Well, yeah. I'm trying to think of what else it is. Esports.
I'd be curious about esports. I would bet there's disparity there.
Well, there's not very. I've been looking into this because we're doing we're looking at some deals here, and I would tell you that there's just not many women at all. Right? There's not many women. There are women gamers, but they haven't really emerged yet.
Well, I'd like to see Battle of the Sexes in that because we got to do the Battle of the Sexes in esports because I think that it should be a level playing field in that.
Without a doubt, right? It's just about experience. It's just about exposure, right? How many girls are being raised to do that? I know Rachel Jacobson, if those of you who don't know her, she is the president, the dynamic, enthusiastic president of the Drone Racing League. And they are very, very passionately, enthusiastically pursuing training of young female drone racing pilots. which is great. She said, hey, this is not right. This is not good enough. We're going to try to change that. And so we've worked with her actually on some high school programs. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth the pursuit for sure.
That's
And
cool.
it all starts with exposure, right? It's like if you show young girls and young boys what's available to them, put it in front of them and let them, gravitate towards what interests them, and then have a mechanism for them to be able to nurture where their interests are. But I'd be willing to bet that there are some young girls out there who would be really good gamers. They just don't see themselves actually picking up the controls, to give it a shot.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
other sports, right?
Shelley, you're shaking your head. Yes?
No, it's, of course, it's back to if you could see her, you could be her, and let's, and it's it's the same thing in STEM fields. I tell young girls, if you want to go into STEM, have your girlfriends go with you, even if they don't want to, and then go with them to their cooking classes. But it's the only way that young girls will feel comfortable going into all boy classes. Go with your girlfriends.
Yeah, although you say cooking, and yet, right, there's so many more very visible chefs that are male than there are female, right? So again, in every single area, we have to continue to be diligent to be able to, as you said, Shelley, if you can see her, you can be her. And we got to make sure.
In science, technology, engineering, math, now we added art, STEAM, it's elective in high school. And so predominantly boys go and girls don't, because they don't want to be the minority in the class. And so, I tell the girls, go with your girlfriend so that they don't feel uncomfortable being alone, right? So that we can start getting more girls, or make it mandatory so that more girls will go, because it starts at a young age. And the same thing with sports. Go with your girlfriends to play sports, because you all want to play sports. It's so good for you. Go play sports so that you're not alone on the field.
And also make it fashionable, right? Because I went to a college preparatory high school where I was a STEM girl. I was a college STEM girl, majored in pre-med and biology, but there weren't a lot of girls in my high school for engineering, and there weren't a lot of girls necessarily, majoring in the sciences. So if we remove some of the stigmas from things like STEM and certain sports, well, girls don't play this or girls don't do that. No, girls can do pretty much anything that they want to do if you give them the opportunity. So I think we have to start removing some of those stigmas,
Yeah,
field hockey, girls shouldn't play this. It's like, well, why not? She can do a little bit more than go to dance class or maybe play soccer. She can play a lot of sports, and she can major in and study a lot of different subjects.
Well, Procter & Gamble did a great job with their ad, Run Like a Girl. I mean, that was just so powerful.
That was powerful. Natalie?
Oh, I was just going to say, when I was growing up, there was a lot of sports that girls weren't allowed to play. And so I was a tomboy. I just pretended I was a boy so that I could play those sports. And that's just not fair. I mean, it's like I should have been able to be a girly girl and play those sports just like the boys. And I had to pretend that I was Nate, when I was a kid, to be able to play Little League and football and all the things that I loved as a kid. And, I was lucky that I had parents that supported me in doing that, and a big sister who was like, she was horrified, but she supported me. And, but, it could have easily gone the other way, right? I could have not played any of those sports and not become the athlete that I am today. And so I think people go, oh, girls are plays so many more sports. And they do in certain pockets, but not across the whole country. And there's still so much stigma around it. And especially in some cultural places like in the South, it's just like the girls are excluded even more so, because it's like they have to look a certain way all the time. And so I think breaking down some of those barriers that are getting in the way, making being an athlete sexy is part of it,
Yeah. So we have work to do as our young women grow up in the world they grow in. What do we grow up in the world that they're growing up in? What do we do with our young men? They're part of this equation, that FQ. What are we saying to them? Today we have the chance to, I'm sure, ask a lot of men for their views and their support. What do we say to them?
I mean, for us, gender equality is not a female issue. It's a social and economic issue. It's a human issue. So it really bothers me when we say we need male allies. It's like we're just giving men more power. We need leadership allies. We are all in this together. So to me, it's a we for we, men and women. So that's what I say. Hold each other's hands and move forward. You know, that's what equality is all about. I don't think it's anyone is bringing anyone else up. I think we are all supporting one another. So that's what we say.
And total agreement here, but there is a portion of our population that feels like they're giving something up to make that happen. Right?
I think it's a leadership.
A zero-sum game. If I'm helping you be more equal, that means I'm less equal. And I believe that we should call that out, because if we don't, it's always just kind of underneath, right, ladies? Kind of just not unspoken.
Well, you know, we call it we need leadership allies, and leadership by default is men, is predominantly men. So we need leadership allies. So if being a leader means giving something up, I think that that's what, you know, a leader does, is inspires others and brings others up.
Right. Absolutely. And Natalie?
We touched on it earlier when she said that men, when they realized there was an inequity, they wanted to do something about it. I think in some cases, some men do not realize that there are disparities in pay and in other things. So you do have to call that out, I believe. But then there's a level of people operating on a very mediocre level. And so when someone else comes in, they feel like that threatens their position. They won't have that. They'll have to give that up if they make room for you. And I think that we have to dispel that there is room for someone else without you having to lose something that you have. You can be complimentary, but I think it takes a certain level of professional maturity to get there. And we need to reframe and kind of reshift that narrative in those conversations. Because we still have far too many boardrooms and too many rooms of decision making where decisions are being made about women and their careers, where there are no women in the room to speak up for the other women, and there are no allies basically to bring other women on. So we do need those people of decision making authority to look up and look around and be more inclusive of the talent that women have.
I've also been the only woman in a room, and you know, sometimes I see that, you know, where it's hard to be the only woman in the room. Like you were saying, you need, you know, bring your friends along. It's like, it's sometimes hard to be the only one standing up in, you know, like they allow the one woman, oh, look, we have a woman on our board, or we have a woman, you know, in this position, and then you're the only one. And, you know, sometimes it is hard to fight for, you know, your right to be an equal in those situations. So sometimes it isn't just having one. It's like we need to have our friends and, you know, other women that we can band together that give us the strength to fight for what we need.
Actually, there is research on that, Natalie, that speaks to 3. 3 is the number where women have enough presence and support where they can really move forward and make a difference. I remember sitting on a board and I said to the guy, listen, I have a lot of business experience. I happen to be the only woman here. I don't want to be that woman, you know, and you all know what that means, right? The woman, always saying, well, what about this? Oh, let's look at this video. How come there are no women here? How come the language is like this? And after a while, you get cast as the woman. Mm-hmm. And God bless this guy. He looked at me and says, Donna, you're here for many reasons, but please don't stop doing that. We need it. Now, talk about being an ally. That was incredibly empowering, right? He said, whatever you have to contribute, we want to hear. That doesn't happen often enough. Now, Danielle brings up this issue, and it's funny. I can't believe you're asking this question, Danielle, not because it's not a great one. It's because 40 years later, I thought this was not as big of an issue, which is, as she's a coach. And she said, parents are not liking their daughters to this day playing sports. They think it's less feminine, as you said, Natalie. They think it's less attractive, right? It takes away from the time she has to spend on academics. Oh, okay. But academics are enriched by the ability for our bodies to be active and play. If anyone looks on aging studies, right, the more active we are, the healthier we are. So she's asking your advice, dear panel. How do you suggest responding to parents who have these and other concerns about their daughters competing in sports?
Yeah.
Shell, go ahead, Shell.
Yeah.
Oh.
It goes.
Oh, go ahead, Natalie, you go.
Well, I was just going to say that so many of these stereotypes is, what I hear a lot. And what I always go to, instead of trying to address those particular ones about like being muscular or that she's a lesbian, is those things, is to point to all of the amazing benefits that come from kids who play sports. That they do better academically, that it builds their self-confidence, that 95% of women executives played sports in high school. And so I point to the statistics of all of the great things that happen to their daughters, instead of trying to go against like, oh, they get too many muscles or, those kinds of things. So I try and be statistic driven on really the research of what happens for these girls when they play sports, and, all of the great that comes from it versus looking at the negatives and trying to reverse those, if that makes sense.
I was going to say the same thing. I would give one simple answer. They're a better team leader. They'll get a better job in the long run. Better success.
Yeah, and
Welcome to data. They say numbers don't lie, right? Men lie. What's the paraphrase? It's men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. The data is the data.
right.
Team sports does something for not only confidence, but your ability to apply critical thinking skills, judgment, knowing how to interact with other people, those soft skills that you can't get out of a textbook.
Right. And it's interesting as we sit here today, we're really thinking about Western models. We're here in America. We're thinking about our culture. I'm thinking about you, Shelley, in Paris with UN Women, and having been made aware of so many programs, life skill building programs for impoverished girls from around the world, whether they be in Uganda or Kenya or India. And not only does sports help all of these girls develop, but in their ecosystem, right, their social sphere, there are men looking at these women developing these skills, and then they're brought in and they see women through a different lens and their young daughters, their capabilities. So there's a social rise here, even that is incremental to all the other benefits that you all have spoken about as well. I just feel like sports is a really great global tonic for elevating women, and I'd love to see it be more a part of the conversation and funding. Like, way to go, Natalie, for getting funding for yours to move forward. But imagine if we saw that all around the world, the impact on poverty, which is the majority of women around the world. It would be really powerful, really powerful.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We help these girls in Malika, which is in the Congo. These girls play tennis, and they're some of the best tennis players. But at a very young age, they don't have money for equipment. Do you know what they use to play tennis? They take a sheet, and that's their tennis net. That's what they use as a tennis net. And they use pans as their rackets. They make it work. And then when they get good, they get rackets. So we just sent them rackets and balls and all kinds of stuff. But they make it work. And confidence starts at the age of 5. These are some of the best tennis players are coming out of a school in Malika. It works. And you find a way. And sports is empowering. And these young girls are finding their voice. They're finding their confidence. They're finding their personality. They're finding their fun. They're finding themselves. There is nothing more powerful than experiencing the growth, the development of these girls, watching them grow. That's all I want to say. When you actually can watch the development of these girls through the power of sports in their lives.
Yeah.
The last thing I think that is so powerful about sports is the mental health. The research overwhelmingly shows that the mental health of kids who play sports is much higher than kids who don't. So, self-esteem, depression, all of those, self-esteem is higher, depression is lower. That they have better coping skills for coping with adversity and with challenges in school, that they've taught themselves the resiliency of being able to overcome. when you play youth sports, you always have a team that's better than you. You have a player that's better than you, and you learn how to overcome that. And if you don't have that and you're in a school situation where you're being, bullied or whatever, it's like a lot of those kids don't have the resiliency that you learn by playing sports. And so more than anything, I would say that the mental health of athletes is overwhelmingly better than kids who aren't playing sports. And that would be one of the things I would say to Danielle as well, and to use with your parents is looking at, especially young girls, they have more problems with self-esteem and confidence in comparing themselves to others, and sports helps take that away.
Van, you have any closing comments on that? That's pretty strong stuff.
Yeah, I would just say that the social aspect, right? Being a part of a team, being accountable and being held accountable, and understanding how to hold your teammates accountable. Everyone has to practice, and everyone has to play her role on that team to move forward to get a win, right? It's not an individual sport when you're playing team sports. So I would say just think about the social aspects of that will stay with her throughout her life.
And I think that's really important. I do want to say that recently KPMG released a study on resilience, and they asked 950 women, I don't know if that came your way at all, about resilience during the pandemic and what kind of leadership skills were difference making. And this touches back on what we spoke about earlier. They talked about it being a function of empathy and grace, right? Not command and control, right? Empathy and grace. And when we talk about women leading the charge, we talk about those soft skills, Shelley, that you mentioned. And I don't know why we call them soft. Maybe by calling them soft, we're actually demeaning them in a way we don't mean to. They're actually power skills that change people's lives. And when we marry these power skills with the power that comes from competing and playing at any level, right, Natalie? That's what I hear you telling us. At every level, you don't have to be an elite athlete to know the benefits of sports. Then you end up being leaders like all of you, like you, Van, right? Leading 3 different organizations concurrently because you have a background in sports, and yet you're empathic and you're a leader of grace, and you make a difference in so many people's world. And it's not just women, right? It expands to all of us. And I think if we can leave today with a message to any of us who've shared this time, first, we want to thank these incredible women and all the work that they continue to do. And we want to let them know that we're going to support you. So let us know how we can do that. And the second is because all of us here have a heart for philanthropy that's tied to sports, that as you look at your organizations, think about the gender equity, right? Think about the leadership allies. Think about the difference making that you can have, right, in changing our world dramatically when we look at the lens and we shift it a little bit differently, like these women actually leading the charge today have shared with you. I want to thank you, Shelley. Good luck in Paris. Love to know how you're going to do. I hope to see you on the green at some point. We're actually involved in a women's developmental golf event here in Florida. Maybe you'll come and play with me in the Pro-Am, Van. All right. Yeah. And Natalie, I can't think of a place that is luckier to have a woman of your intellect, passion, and drive than youth sports, which totally needs fixing, but to make sure that our kids are not discriminated against because their inability to pay actually will ensure a greater representation in our leadership core in the future. So thank you for that. I think we all thank Roy. We have a minute and a half here. If anyone wants to say a closing statement, I'd like to open it up. No.
Thank you, Donna, for being such a great host of this conversation.
All right.
Yeah, this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for facilitating. You did a wonderful job.
No, it's really great. And Van, we always have a good time, don't we?
Yes, we do. Anytime I could be in your company is a great time.
Well, that wasn't my closing sentiment here, but thank you all. I'm grateful that all of us have been able to benefit from your experience and your ongoing work. It makes us all better. So thanks so much. And Uncle Roy Kessel, we're throwing it back to you. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for such an outstanding panel, Donna. Great job moderating. I want to thank Shelley, Van, and Natalie for being part of that amazing conversation and listening to the perspectives and the strength and the passion is fantastic. So we appreciate your time. We're going to go now to our third breakout session. In the health and safety track, we have athlete abuse. In the DEI track, session on minorities, international track, Central and South America, skill development track for storytelling, and the wildcard track for maximizing hybrid events. So we hope you enjoy your next session, and we'll see you back here in a couple of hours for our closing session of the evening.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Roy. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Roy.
Thank you.